Hey, everybody. Welcome to a brand new week of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am Dan Bespris at Dan Bespris on Twitter. That hasn't changed. A lot of things have changed for me lately, but that has not. At Old Man Squad over on Twitter if you want to follow the feed of the entire network. So you'll get all the shows that are coming under the umbrella. Very cool. Very cool. Please do drop a follow over there as well. Should be a fun week coming up here. Talking to Mike Catron in just a moment or two today. We'll get into some top 50 discussions. Kind of centered around whether the NBA's the term of changing of the guard comes to mind. Has there been one? Is there more coming? And how do we know? Which is extraordinarily important as you start to look towards your next fantasy draft, meaning, okay, we can look at what just happened this year. You can look at the top 12. You can look at the next 12. You can look at the next 12, that kind of stuff. Is someone about to jump in there that wasn't there before? Are guys at the top about to fall out? If so, who? Who's coming in either direction? Could Steph be back? Is he done in there? Is Dame done in there? Is Butler done in there? KD was number 11 this year. Massive year. He was number 11. It's just so hard to be part of that upper tier in the NBA right now on fantasy. I mean, you can be good in real life. And I mean, Steph Curry this year averaged 26.5 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists, almost 5 3-pointers a game. He shot 92% at the free throw line, and that was enough for number 22 per game. That's crazy. It's freaking impossible to be a top fantasy player right now. A couple other guests scheduled for later this week. I don't know specifically when you guys are going to get to see those shows because I've got to record them first. But Keith Cork over from Sports Ethos should be on the show later this week. Jacob Dunn, I think, will be doing a show later this week on points leagues. Dunn is with Fantrax these days. So that should be a lot of fun. We don't cover points leagues all that much. That one will cater to those of you that have been yelling at me that we haven't done it. Noah Rubin coming up at some point in the not-too-distant future on the pod, so stay tuned for that. And then at some point, you will listen to me shout into the void myself because we got to finish going through the Old Man Squad. I'm having so much damn fun with guests that I'm not covering the things that I had actually scheduled to do at some point here. But look, it's going to be great. We got the draft coming up. We'll get some people on that can tell us about whether or not there are any players we should be eyeballing there. Because, I've tried to soften my stance on rookies, meaning original stance, don't draft rookies. New stance, as of about a year and a half ago, maybe consider the ones that are typically big men who won't ruin your percentages. Those are the rookies that can push through. Chet being a nice example this last year. Wemby, of course, although I wasn't willing to pay up because I figured there was too much hype. Turns out not enough hype. Can't believe that happened. Mark Williams, if you're going back a couple years, the name that kind of falls in there. If you can find a rookie that's not going to totally tank your free throw percent and you think they're going to get some action and they're a big dude, they've got an opportunity. But this is all stuff for not today, because today we're talking to Mike Catron, who I'm embarrassed to say I don't think has been on the pod. Well, it was an old show. Hasn't been on any show I've done in a couple of years. We are very much going to rectify that, as has been the case with a couple of folks that we've talked to so far. So, enough waiting. Let's get that bad boy cooking, and you'll hear from me again afterwards. Without further ado, here's Mike. It's Catron, people. It's Catron.
That's how it's set.
Get it right. Or pay the... Oh, I should have worn my Camp Anawana shirt if I was going to say get it right or pay the price. Yeah. That would have been a nice little UGG reference.
Ugly.
That's right.
Rest in power, Ugly.
At Watch the Boxes on the socials, Mike Catron. Welcome to... I want to say welcome back to the show, but it's not the same show. So I have to say welcome now for the first time to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. It is so damn nice to talk to you again. How you been, my man?
Yeah. Congratulations. That's the first thing I want to say. Congratulations on the new podcast.
Congratulations to you on the
Thank you very
new
much.
living being.
Yeah, that's what I've been up to. I have a daughter, and
Amazing.
I think she timed it perfectly. Like I have good karma and bad karma. Like my internet just went out right before we started.
But it missed the show
So
though. That's good
yeah,
karma.
but it did go off right before we started, so not during. Which, knock on wood, it's about to happen, I
I
assume.
know we're not done yet. Dude,
Yeah,
what are
we
you
just
doing?
literally just started. But like, yeah, my daughter was born right before March Madness, and
Oh,
so she has been indicted. That's not the word.
no.
Just beaten over the
Indoctrinated?
yeah, indoctrinated. Yeah, she's been
No.
watching basketball since the day she was
Yeah.
born.
There you go.
Right, tournament
Inundated?
inundated. That's the word I'm looking for. That's how much sleep I've had
None.
in the last 3 months.
Dude, Mike, you are totally forgiven. You know what'll actually be funny to you? I don't funny, rage inducing. I'm not really sure. So for me, it was this weird middle where the Venn diagram of rage and hilarious intersect of going back. I shouldn't even tell you this. My first kid didn't sleep through the night until 11 months. Don't worry, that's not normal.
Listen, can we start a GoFundMe for you or something like that?
It was rough.
Go on a vacation
Yeah,
for that.
yeah. Without I don't want to do the whole story on that because I want to talk to you about fantasy sports. But my second kid, we overfed, and that was like a good and bad thing because we went into his 4-month checkup and the pediatrician was like, "Oh my god, your kid is huge," but also you can sleep train now super early, so it's not 11 months for everybody. But I did go back and look at emails that I wrote during those 11 months after I had my first kid. No recollection of it. Like typos everywhere. I was doing the your thing, which like that's my wave a stick at young people, and I was doing it, and I was like, who the hell wrote these? Yeah,
who's writing this crap? It's terrible.
Someone hacked my email account and wrote these like straight up idiotic notes. It couldn't possibly have been me. And then I'm like, oh yeah, the rest of that sounds like me. I guess that's. And so I chuckle, and I'm like, people continued to do business with me at that point, despite seeing this. So I don't know. Thank you to everybody for.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. If that,
Yeah,
what that says about you or them, I'm gonna say it says something good about you. How about that?
it was definitely bad about them. That was because I think that was like right after the Bakersfield Blaze went under, and
Okay.
so I didn't have a whole lot going on. How you been otherwise? What's up? What's the you know, what's the haps? What's the pod situation? What's the life situation? What's the fantasy situation? I want the whole rundown here.
Yeah. I got the Watching the Boxes podcast. I do it with my good friend Tyler P. Watts, who is I think is like the brains of the operation. I like to consider myself like if we were doing like inside the NBA, like I'm hanging out, making jokes, chilling, and I'm like doing a little eye test, and I kind of know what I'm talking about.
Stop
And then like
it.
Tyler comes in, he's got all the EJ stat of the night, and he knows what's actually going on. So he fills in and tells me when I'm right or wrong, and that helps me a lot. And I like that back and forth. I don't know how really anyone does like their own podcast by themselves for 40, 45 minutes. I don't like the way my voice sounds, so I need that back and forth. This is why I don't listen to Watching the Boxes podcast, but other people do, so that's cool. It's really great.
Awesome. Yes, everyone should, and you do a nice, convenient thing by making that your Twitter handle at Watch the Boxes, so folks can find you there as well. First of all, give yourself more credit. You're better at fantasy sports than that. I know it, but I will not keep you on the rails here. That's Tyler's job. I'm here to just let you go nuts for a few. Let's begin going nuts and see where it takes us. Mike, it's actually been a lot of fun for me over the last week or two to check in with other analysts on kind of what they've been taking away from the changing fantasy basketball landscape, whatever that kind of means to different folks. And I mean, the answers have run the gamut. You know, a couple weeks ago, Josh was talking about the value of kind of late swings, and we went through whether you draft blocks early or not. We went through what are the Olympics going to mean, the 65 game threshold. Like, we're covering all kinds of stuff. And the really neat part for me, I've said this before, 2 neat parts for me. Number one, I don't have to come up with content for the show. So bingo, bango. But the other neat thing is it's a lot of stuff that I'm not thinking of. So the floor is yours. What's something that's jumped out at you lately? Could be this year, could be the last 3 years, could be the last 5 minutes.
I think it's definitely this year. I'm officially on board. Maybe the last couple years I've been saying the baton's being handed off. Obviously the for really a long time, we kind of knew who was going to be in the top 10 every year, top 15 every year. It wasn't a lot of movement. There would be a guy here, a guy there coming in and out, but you felt pretty confident about who you would be targeting come next season. I think completely we have to look at it differently. We have like your draft, the way you approach your draft. I think those second, third, fourth rounds are going to be, they're always really important, but like that's where you're going to find all the value. And that first round is now, I think, just completely like a crapshoot. Like other than Jokic, I don't know who's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know who to recommend. I don't know who what I feel about Wemby at all. Like I am on board with your never draft rookies. Like I think a lot of older guys are undervalued. Not so much anymore. I think we are now going the way of the old man. We are old men.
I'm sorry.
All the young guys are coming in. Rookies, second, third-year players. They are far more valuable than your old staples that like live around, like your Middletons. Like, and you can't just can't rely on that kind of consistency. And I just don't. It's a completely, to me, the fantasy landscape has changed. It's in flux. I don't know where it's going. And I also like the idea that you got to. A lot of people just say, "Hey, I'm going to do a great draft." I think there has to be seasons within the season, because you have what is now like the games max that has changed the way and how often these guys play. You have your middle of the season where things are starting to be in flux, and then you have silly season at the end, which ends up being in everybody's playoffs. So it's all these different factors all matter. And I'm trying to take a different approach to fantasy basketball. Instead of saying like, here's my top 100 dudes. It's like, no, I don't think that's how it's going to work anymore. We've always kind of done tiers, like a tiered system.
Oh yeah.
I think you need a tiered system, a preseason tiered system, a middle of the season tiered system, and an end of the season tiered system. And those are the things that you should be working on as the season goes along. And I think it's, to me, I want to be a little bit more in the weeds instead of being like, yeah, Scotty Barnes is good. Like,
okay, so there was a lot of things there.
There was a lot of things.
First thing that jumped out, and I figured I would pull up a couple of numbers while you were talking, was the changing of the guard element, which I think is a really interesting concept. And I don't know that there's a better way. There probably is a better way, but on the fly, I don't know that there's a better way to illustrate this than how many first round. We'll go per game on this because I think that's how most people are drafting, and then you're kind of like praying for games played from your top guys after that. From 2 seasons back, I say this year as the current 1 year back, 2 back. So 2021 to 2022, there are only, I believe, 5 first rounders per game that were also first rounders for this last season. Jokic, Embiid, Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Anthony Davis. Those are the 5 from 2 seasons back that were still in the first round.
Yeah.
So I think this actually illustrates the point that you're talking about, that there has actually been a fair amount of first round turnover. Because, I mean, here are the 7 names that weren't in the first round from that year, that weren't in the first round this year. LeBron James, Steph, DeJounte Murray, Kat, Giannis, Trae Young, and James Harden. Those were first rounders that year.
I forgot about that DeJounte Murray season.
Yeah, remember?
That was actually really funny for me.
That was like shed a single tear for that season in San Antonio. But I mean, that's a lot of stuff. And then even if this last season, just 1 year straightforward, you had Steph fall out of the first round, you had Dame fall out of the first round, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, and then Jaren Jackson, who was sort of like borderline first round anyway, but we'll give him that regardless. And Kawhi has kind of like bounced in and out a little bit, so he's a bit in the gray area.
I think we all got our own opinion on Kawhi, and he's a top 10 player when he plays.
Yeah. So there is a changing of what's going on in the first round. There isn't that like, okay, there's the upper tier, there's that initial chunk, and like Luka is probably going to be in there if his free throw percentage holds, and 8 caddy's going to be in there regardless. Now you've got Wemby moving up into it, Donovan Mitchell moved up into it, Halliburton moved up since that 2 years ago again. Frickin' Larry Markkinen, I think, ended up at number 12 this last year, or 13, or whatever it was. He was very close.
Yeah.
So yes, full agree with you on that. It does feel like there's a new wave of top crust guys that are ready to go. Where I do want to explore more is what you were talking about with the next couple of rounds, because I find the second round to be, and I don't know if you agree, an unbelievably difficult round every year. For some reason, over the course of draft season, like on August 1st, when Yahoo Leagues open the second round, it's like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. And then over the next 2 months, they push in each direction based on probably pretty good information. The good ones push towards like 12 to 15, and the ones nobody wanted get pushed down to, 20 to 30. And you're left with this clump in the middle where you're like, I don't want anything to do with these guys regardless.
There's a lot of good third round players.
Yeah, there are a lot of good third round players. Do you think that this changing of the guard, could that change the way the second round shakes out, or is it going to be kind of the same phenomenon, just different names?
I think it has to, right? Because there's not a lot of discrepancy in that, like you're saying, from like maybe like 17 on down to 27, 30. There's not a huge, I guess, talent discrepancy, because you know who the guys who are going to be potentially top 10 guys. Like, you kind of know the guys who can do it and the guys who can't. How that's going to pan out, I have no idea. I think that's the fun in it. But they're just like, Tyrese Halliburton gets over 10 assists a game, nobody else does. So you can make those arguments, those guys push towards, hey, I'll take him at the turn, etc. But like Sabonis or Trae Young, Tyrese Maxey or Jalen Brunson, Chet Holmgren or Giannis, like, this is, I think, where people have to stop going, what are they ranked? And start saying, what is their overall value in the team that I want to develop? Can you make an argument that Trae Young is more valuable than Domantas Sabonis? Of course you could.
Yeah.
And you could also go the other way about it. And I think you have to have kind of a thought process where specific stats matter to you. And that's always been kind of an approach that people take. The rarer the stat, the more kind of important one guy who stands out is. And I think you had to start going into that like individual stat, whether it's 3-pointers or assists, or even if you want to do I recommend people do the percentages. Everybody punts percentages.
Love percentages.
Do the percentages.
Yeah, preaching to the choir on that one. They're easy to win because everybody ignores them.
Exactly. So find those kind of like outlier stats that people have. And I think that might give more weight to someone who you wouldn't consider a second round player, but is going to return value in a way that wins you a category, instead of value in a way that they're ranked higher than another person on whatever ranking site you happen to be on.
Yeah, although I want to make sure that folks know there's kind of a like, but this is what you were talking about with tiers, right? Like if you get guys in a similar tier, this is a very, I think, a really nice way to start thinking about them. If you're talking about a guy that's in one tier versus a guy who's like 3 tiers down, you probably still want the guy in the higher one. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. So because that was like, I think we're seeing this very, very sharp pendulum swing right now from like the 24th guy is better than the 25th guy to more of like, they're the same. Take the one that makes sense for your team. But then I had a few folks yelling at me on social that was like, oh, the 35th guy and the 75th guy are the same. I'm like, I don't think that's actually true. I think you probably
that's a little much. I have like I call it the plateau region.
Yeah.
And I feel like the first plateau are guys that like either could be I have like 4 tiers and a plateau region. That's how I kind of do my preseason stuff. And that plateau region is where everybody kind of, it's like they're all basically the same, but that's like, it's like 45, 50 to like 75 in that range. all of those guys end up having like a Z score or whatever method you use,
Right.
roughly the same, but not all of those guys are the same. Like,
Yeah. The
if
one at the
you're
very top is probably a little better than the one at the very bottom, but like you
yeah,
push it a little closer together, they are pretty much the same. And also stats that you're hunting are very relevant there as well. You were just talking about.
absolutely. Like, you could probably dump Jaylen Brown and Terry Rozier into that plateau region, but
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, you know what you're gonna get from both of those guys, and I think scoring is really hard to get once you get out of those first couple rounds. So, like, to me, Jaylen Brown is more valuable.
Yeah, and I'm looking at I think you could almost play like a rank game with someone who didn't like this idea of I call them buckets, the tiers buckets, same
Yeah,
thing.
whatever.
Like I like the word bucket, so I say it a whole bunch of times. I'm betting that if you asked enough people, like, who do you think was ranked higher between I don't know, Daniel Gafford and Nick Claxton. Obviously, the diehards would know, but
Yeah,
would they be able to really tell the difference by all that much?
probably not.
And Gafford was what, like 50? I mean, actually, that's including some of the playoff games. But if you push them, if you include the entire season, those guys were separated by about 2 rounds. So technically, Gafford is the one you'd want in a vacuum. But at the end of the day, they're not that different.
No,
Gafford's free throw percent was kind of the only difference between the two guys. One of them shot 66%, the other one shot like 40. I mean, it
yeah,
was pretty bad.
and your difference is what you're paying for them, right?
Yeah.
Their perceived value and their actual value,
Mm.
and people didn't. I mean, people who were paying attention were like, Danny Gafford is really good. He gets good blocks, etc.
Yeah,
But he
I
wasn't
like
about
a lot.
sure. I really liked him when he was on the Chicago Bulls. There's a lot of playoff Chicago Bulls in still in the playoffs, actually, quite frankly. I won't get too into
You
that.
can. I've let like a lot of the folks that I've been talking to on this show happen to be Bulls fans, and I say the same thing to each of you, which is I'm so sorry. Like,
It's there's no. I mean, we know what we've gotten into. We know what we're like. I think if anyone's well aware of of the NBA, they know what's going on with the Bulls, and people in Chicago absolutely know there is no escaping the ownership. There is no escaping the fact that this team will isn't poised to like significantly shift their mantra of being a mediocre team that sells out games. Like
yeah,
that's
I guess
that's it.
financially, I know, but wouldn't it be nice to just blow it up? You got all these, you had all these
Yes,
great. I mean,
of course.
you could have gotten the world for Alex Caruso at the deadline last
Yeah.
year.
What are
The
you
world.
waiting for? This team isn't winning anything. What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I think from what I've heard from people who have more information than I do about the Bulls, um, the Bulls front office and ownership think they are the smartest people in the room, and because they're successful, and it's like you're successful because Michael Jordan and Derrick Rose existed, and this is
Yeah.
the third largest market in America, and you bought the team in like the 80s or whatever.
Yeah,
It's like
you pretty
I'm
much
so
can't screw that up.
successful. I bought Bitcoin at like $4. I'm the smartest person in the room. No, you're real lucky.
Yeah, you got something good happened to you. It's some
Yeah,
number of years ago. And how long can you ride the wave on that? But man, like not trading Caruso just felt like the craziest thing
he's not
on
he's not
earth.
getting any more valuable.
No, that was it. You could have gotten firsts for him. That's huge. Oh well. In any
You would
event.
think.
Okay, so back to the fantasy thing.
Yeah,
Third, fourth round. That was another thing you mentioned during the initial list of takeaways, which again I tried to like
there was a
parse.
few.
There were a few. Oh, it was amazing.
I brain dumped my mantra onto you.
I love the brain dump. Do you think, and I'm trying to, these are relatively hard questions, so feel free to tell me to F off because like you're running on no sleep.
That's fair.
Do you think that we just saw over the last 2 years that wave of guys drafted between 30 and 45 or 30 and 50 make the jump? Or do you think there are more coming? Because that's actually where I'm a little bit stuck myself. I don't know that I have the answer to that question, but we had like the Tyrese Maxey jump, the Scotty Barnes jump, the Shea jump the previous year, which partially because he was injured during training camp, but either way, like you got these guys that were 25 to 50 range picks that jump 2 to 3 rounds. Are there more coming, do you think? That's hard to me.
Yeah, I think yes, because like usually I say no to that, and I'm like, everything reverts back to the mean. Me and Tyler talk about that a lot. Everybody needs to settle down. Things revert back to the mean. But I do think there is not just a culture shift, but like the way the game is played shift, and also this changing of the guard. The league has never been more talented. And you saw all these rookies, second-year players, third-year players come in and actually play incredibly important roles on their team to make them valuable now. And having those reps at such a young age, I think allows them to move quicker into their, I guess, quote unquote, prime than maybe previous generations. So like that 26 to like 28, 29 used to be people's primes. I think maybe that's shifting a little bit earlier. 24 is starting where you're entering that prime. And I think that prime can last longer now simply because of the advances in everything. Medical technology, the way the game is played, the way they pay attention to like the wear and tear that they put on these people's bodies. And I think you will see more jumps from guys like Keegan Murray. Like I think Keegan Murray's like ready. I love Keegan Murray. But is he like a top 50 fantasy guy? Like I think he can be, and I think he'll get there sooner. I think a lot of people wait. I know I do. I wait too long, and I go, "Hey, this guy's going to be really good," and I'm either too early or too late. And right now, I've noticed that when think I'm too early this season and last season, guys like Jalen Williams, guys like who was it? Which one was it? I've already forgotten. Like Franz Wagner, guys like that are already making that leap. I don't have to wait 2 more years for them to start moving up into a place where they're more they're valuable as fantasy players. They're moving up immediately because they're playing bigger roles on their teams earlier in their career.
Last question, and if the answer is let's check back in 2 months, that's totally fine. Do you have anyone you're already kind of earmarking as let's see what this dude's ADP is? I think he could jump, or is that more of a August, September kind of question?
I've said Jalen Williams is my. I think he might be a 2nd-round player.
Yeah, I don't think
he's really good.
That's not even a hot take. That's like
I don't think it is
at this point. He was what he finished I think in the 30s this year.
Is that
Am
true?
I remembering that right? How fast can we check ourselves on this one? He started slowly too. He started at like 90, and he was the easiest buy low rec in the history of fantasy basketball.
Yeah,
he's awesome. Absolutely awesome. Do you have where he finished? I'm trying to figure it out.
He's incredible. I got 45 on the one that I'm looking at, but over the last like 2 months, he was 34.
Yeah, and like it does feel like he could continue to get better because there's really no more that Shea could be asked to do on that team, and I don't see any other dudes that are like about to launch themselves into a max usage role. I think the only way that gets blown up is if OKC pushes a bunch of chips in and goes and gets a high usage guy, right?
I feel like they could do that. They could do that without blowing up their team. Right? They have 33 first-round draft picks.
That's true. Good point.
Next 8 years, like I think they could
blowing up a cabinet. That's it. They just have to detonate a cabinet in the back. It's not even.
You can have anyone on the Bulls for 1 first-round draft pick.
Please give us something.
Yeah, I think it would work. I think they all be great fits in Oklahoma City. Come on.
Yeah, all those Bulls. Yeah, I mean honestly, like. They might actually be okay fits there. Like to me, the Bulls. I don't know. I'm not a Bulls fan. I'm just someone who watches and goes, "What are we doing here?" Is like, it does feel like change of scenery could fix things for the players individually to not be there. Because once you get into that stagnation point, guys just stop caring as much.
Oh, absolutely. When you know you're not, like that, I think that's very real. When you know you aren't competing, why are you competing so hard?
Right. Yeah.
If you know you're not going to get a raise this year, why are you working so hard?
Yeah, it's real. It's a long NBA season too. Those guys don't want to blow out their knees for a team that's going to be the second to last play-in seed or whatever it was.
it
well.
ruin their next contract, and
Yeah.
which is generational wealth. Like, what I mean? Like, that's
Yeah.
not it's not worth it.
Like, oh,
And
we can get the 8 seed instead of the 9, or I can set my family and 9
yeah,
generations of my
or I can
family up.
get another contract and I can walk when I'm 45.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
cool.
that part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like, I'd rather
Isn't
do that.
it isn't the case for some of these guys that chose to get their team 2 extra playoff seeds 15 years ago or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's an obvious lesson that's learned. And anyway, I got nothing else on the Bulls. Mike,
Neither
thank you so
neither
much.
do I. I don't have anything else on the Bulls either. They make my life miserable.
And yet,
And
you're
yet
gonna watch.
I go to a game every year. So
Yeah,
I'm in Chicago. Like, what am I gonna do? Not go?
you got no choice. You're in it, man. Mike Catron, get it right. At Watch the Boxes on Twitter. Anything you want to promo? I know you said you're kind of cooling with your kiddo, but
Yeah, we've been taking it pretty easy. I mean, subscribe to the Watching the Boxes podcast wherever podcasts are found. We follow me at Watch the Boxes on Twitter. Follow Tyler at Tyler P Watts. That's Watts, because he's the brains behind the operation. And other than that, like, enjoy the playoffs
yeah.
and enjoy basketball. It's cool.
If the playoffs ever come back after this, whatever it is, week and a half long.
Yeah, I know. I'm really depressed. I'm like, where's the damn finals?
There needed to be a finals game to pick us all up after Inside the NBA died potentially forever.
Listen, I can't. I honestly cannot talk about that because it will make me emotional. This is like legitimately something as a elder millennial has been a part of my life, like my entire life.
Yeah, same. It's really weird. And it was weird too to see the like videos they were showing of the early days of that show and thinking, I didn't realize how much those guys' faces changed. I know it was happening, but when it happened so slowly, it's like that lobster in the boiling water thing where you didn't really notice. But yeah, that crap sucks. I'm holding out hope that somebody's gonna try to like assemble them on another network or
they could
something.
easly just start their own thing. Who's watching TV anyway? Everybody's streaming everything.
True. Do it Inside the NBA streaming pod, do a regular whatever.
Put it on a website, put it on a YouTube, do whatever. I'll watch it. I'll be there.
Same. I don't care that half of those guys don't watch every single player in the NBA. That's not why I watch the show. That's what we do for fantasy. I don't need everybody else to do that crap. Entertain me.
Not at all. I want to see Shaq fall down. I want to see Chuck possibly lose a ton of money live on TV and be sort of drunk. Like, I love this. This is why I'm watching.
It's entertainment. There are lots of other sources if you need somebody to know 14 deep on whatever team. Anyway, letting you get back to your day. I said 20 to 25 and I've exceeded it, but we're giggling, so why the hell not? Mike, thank you so much for carving out time, and it's so nice to talk to you again. Let's do this. How about soon?
Yeah, I'm happy to oblige. This is always a good time. It's always good talking to you, and congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Takes a lot of effort, a lot of work to put a new podcast together, so I think it'll be fine.
Thank you, sir. I'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.
There you go. My good buddy, the great Mike Catron. Back on the program, rekindling old affections here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. We did not get back. It occurred to me as I was listening back with you guys. We did not get to loop back around to one of the points that Mike made during his initial response to what have you been taking away from the NBA lately, which was that there are chunks to the season. There's the early, the mid, the late, and that there need to be sort of player tiers reassembled as you work your way through the season. I think I have some pretty good questions about that I believe we can take that concept and I'm sure he's already doing this too. So I'll let Mike explain it way better than I ever could, but opportunities to kind of ease the burden of figuring out where everybody should go the following year, because the second half of the season, even if you just broke the season into 2 chunks, the second half of the season leaderboard, fantasy leaderboard in particular, looks very different than the first half. So again, big thank you to Mike Catron at Watch the Boxes, host of Watching the Boxes, fantasy basketball podcast. We'll try to we'll loop back around with Mike in a couple of weeks, and we can go over the that sort of season. I would call it season breakup, I think, maybe my fairest way to put it. And we'll get to loop back around that and kind of carve up that topic and see where it all goes. So that should be a lot of fun. As far as what's going on today, not much in the way of NBA news. Mike Brown did ultimately agree to a new contract so that he's with the Kings for a few more years. That was something that they really needed to do. And for the rest of us, we just sit and wait for the NBA Finals, which are still a few days away. We'll get there as this week peters along. We'll finally get some basketball back. Watch baseball in the interim. Watch baseball and listen to podcasts. Mine, Mike's, both. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. I was on Noah's podcast late last week. It dropped over the weekend. I wasn't sure if it was going Friday or today or someday in between. So thank you to Noah Rubin for having me on his show. Thank me later. I will thank you now, Noah, for welcoming on the pod. And basically, that's the plan here. I think you guys have all seen it. My plan in the early going, at least, and hopefully more, is to just keep rumbling. Just keep rumbling. We're going to talk to smart people about smart things, and hopefully we can all make our collective fantasy knowledge smarter. So thank you to the guests. Thank you to all of you guys for watching, listening, subscribing. That's a big one. I'll say it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001. If you're watching on Twitter, please find some other place to subscribe to this show. YouTube, if you like having the video element. Although, again, I'll remind you all, not every show is going to be available on YouTube. Trying to do as many of them as humanly possible. And when we get towards draft season, then you'll have pretty much all of them there. But in the off season, some guests are going to want to do audio. There are going to be days where I have kids running around and screaming, and I'm going to want to do audio only where I can't run live. And those shows will not be available on YouTube or Twitter. So please find some other way to subscribe besides just following on Twitter. I know that's a really nice hub, and it's where I can direct you to everything. But whether it's YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, whatever, please click a subscribe button there. If you have a moment to do a 5-star review, that's also super helpful. And of course, if you have a second to retweet or like anything that we got going on, that is also helpful. And perhaps you can do that while you go and follow myself at Dan Vespers and Mike at Watch the Boxes over on social media. It's a great starting point. And then you just bounce to all the other things I told you to do from there. That'll do it for our Monday pod. Again, I don't know the order of what's coming up the rest of this week, but we do have a few more guests cooking. Keith Cork of Sports Ethos, Noah Rubin, as we mentioned, he's at Roto World. We've got, what did I mention? Jacob Dunn at Fantrax. And is that it for this week? That might be it for this week. Also, more cool stuff going on with the Old Man Squad Sports Network, not just this show. Looks like we will be adding another couple of podcasts this week. Question of exactly when that happens, I do not know. So I don't want to give any of that secret away, but it continues to just be very, very cool. And if any of you are out there and you're like, Dan, I've been a podcaster for years and I never knew what to do with it, come find me. You found me already. Actually, getting in contact is the easy part. Finding me, because you got to spell Vespers, that's the hard part. Look at that. Mike tuning in on Twitter to the show he was just on. You're welcome, Mike, and thank you. But that, again, is not his Twitter handle that I'm flashing up on the screen. Twitter handle is at Watch the Boxes. Have a great rest of your Monday, everybody. We'll be back with you tomorrow in some capacity. Again, am I talking to somebody? Probably. Who? Not sure yet. See you then.